Peter, I'll be your MC for one MC today. Thanks for joining us. Any newcomers today? Anybody who hasn't been to one MC before? All right, couple of hands raised. Perfect. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you come back. And make sure to download the app. There is an app in the App Store. It's free. If you already have it downloaded, please check in. It allows us to track who attends these events. And then the Kauffman Foundation also tracks attendance throughout the whole country. Thank you to our sponsors, and we do have Daniel Companies up there now. I think last time we didn't, so I think these personal shout-outs are a little bit higher level of sponsorship, so we'll just bill you. But yeah, thank you to our sponsors. Allow us to do what we do every Wednesday here at Dakota Stage. So if you see them, thank them. And for those of you that are new, 1 Million Cups is a free program every Wednesday morning. Get together, have an entrepreneur up on stage, tell us a little bit about their company, their idea. The idea being, how can we change the face of our community over 1 million cups of coffee? Remember to use the hashtag 1MCND, not only today, but throughout the week. Anytime you have some ideas that you want the 1 Million Cups community to see. If you have questions throughout the presentation today, please use that on Twitter, and we'll ask the question for you. With that, we'll move into some community announcements. So if you have an announcement, any events, any other announcements, please come up to the stage, and we'll get you the mic.
Good morning. Looks like I might be the only one. Welcome to 1 Million Cups, everybody. My name is Lakin. I'm on staff at Center for Technology and Business, and I get the pleasure of organizing TEDx Bismarck, along with some great community partners. I am so excited to tell you that we only have 3 tickets left. So if you're interested, pull out your phone, grab up those tickets before they're all gone. I promise you won't want to miss it. So anyway, August 15th, TEDx Bismarck, get your tickets.
Thanks, Lakin. I do want to make one other announcement. I think I saw it on Facebook yesterday, but Bismarck was on livability.com. I think we're in the top 100 places to live in the country. Not only in the top 100, I think we're number 15. Does that sound about right? All right, so I think that's a round of applause, right? So pretty cool. Take that, Raleigh. Was Raleigh 16 or something? Okay. All right, well, we'll get into our presenter today. Krista is with us. She's with a company called Part Us. It's a tech startup located in Fargo, which is an online platform that streamlines the divorce process by bringing data into one place that can be shared and collaborated on. Please give Krista a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I was just chatting with a few of you out in the hallway. I'm originally from Bismarck, moved to Fargo about 12 years ago, so it's always fun to be back. My dad's in the audience. I invited him to come along and check it out, too. He's never been to a 1 Million Cups, so hopefully you'll see him here after today. I've been practicing family law now for about 21 years. And how many of you have had either the personal experience or you've known somebody who's went through a divorce? Just a quick show of hands. It affects almost everybody, whether it's a family member, friend, or you've been through it personally. The divorce industry is a $15 billion industry a year. Average cost of a divorce is anywhere between $15,000 and $25,000 for a divorce. I've had some that go very smoothly and quickly. I've had some that were upwards of $70,000, $80,000 just on my fees alone. Don't know what the other attorneys spent. So having been through this for so long, there were things that always frustrated me throughout the process. You can't take a lot of the emotion out of divorces. There are some things I can and can't do, but just the way our process kind of progressed, I thought could be more efficient. So one day I had a friend he's what's called a distinguished engineer at Microsoft. There's about 50 of those in the history of the Microsoft industry or company that get a designation from Bill Gates for their contribution to Microsoft. And he's a friend out of Fargo, and he said, you should do a divorce app. And I'm so not techie, and I'm pretty risk averse too. I have my divorce practice. I've been doing that for 20 years. You build it up, and I'm good with that. I started thinking about it, and I thought, boy, you could do this and that and this and that, and there's just nothing out there that we really have right now. And started researching, and there really wasn't anything out there that I thought was similar to what I wanted to do. Mentioned it to another individual who was a former client that went through a divorce. He said, I think it's a great idea. I'll give you $100,000 to get it started. So had $100,000, had no idea where I needed to go. Went to a company in Fargo, and they did what you call wireframes of what the process can kind of look like. It costs about $15,000 to do it. They told me it's going to cost you about $700,000 to $800,000 for your minimum viable product. So I thought, now I'm out of luck. I have now $85,000. Where do I go? Circled back to my tech friend and showed him what I was looking at doing, and he said, I think what you're doing is a game changer, and if you give me an ownership interest, I'll code everything for you. So we have about $1 million worth of software now that's been coded, and I'll kind of walk you through the process and what it does and where we're at and open it up for questions. So as I indicated, the process with a divorce, as a lot of you know if you've been through it, a lot of paperwork, a lot of shuffling, worse than applying for a mortgage. There's a lot of information you have to gather. Some clients give it to me in Tupperware bins. Other people give it to you in a fax and an email, and then you have a whole bunch of information that you need to compile because there's no platform that clients and attorneys can work off of and have a portal. So that's why we came up with the Pardis concept, to try to get rid of some of the paperwork, to streamline things and to make the process easier for attorneys, judges, mediators, clients, just everyone that's involved in the process. Currently, it's called FinPlan Divorce Planner. That's about the only software that's currently out there through Thomson Reuters. It's a Windows 95-based program. It sits on your firm server. My client can't access it. I can't share it with an opposing attorney. I have to print it up. You go to mediation, you try to settle a case, and you're working off of, it's apples to oranges, and you spend hours just trying to get on the same page when you're trying to settle a case. So that's just a snapshot of what the Windows 95-based software looks like that Thomson Reuters has been using for years. They actually discontinued tech support on this system, so they're not even doing tech support on this anymore. So some attorneys use Excel spreadsheets. It's just kind of a mishmash of stuff that we're using. So we created Pardis. Part of what we did is we tried to come up with a name. I didn't want it to be, divorce advocate, too harsh, but I didn't want it to be conscious uncoupling, where it felt too fluffy either. I mean, it's like you're getting a divorce, we're separating you, but we came up with Pardis, got the domain name of www.pardis.com, which we were fortunate to get a very short one-name domain name. So this is just a screenshot. I'll walk you through a few screenshots of what the software does. Attorneys can purchase either a one-case package. Clients or individuals going through a divorce, if they don't have an attorney, can purchase it as well. Previously, like I said, the software that's out there, it was only for attorneys to use on their firm server. But now if somebody wants to use the software, they can buy one case. Right now is $99 for a case. If you buy a 5-case package, it's $89 each, so it reduces the price. 10 is $79 each, or firms can buy a 1-year subscription unlimited for $1,000. So we have a lot of people that use like a 1 case, and then they decide they like it, and then they're using it. Larger firms buy a 1-year subscription. So you set up a case when you're in the system. You just enter in some of the basic information. What it doesn't do is provide legal advice. I didn't want this to be, there's a purpose for attorneys, and I didn't want this to try to be a LegalZoom or a forum website, because that's not what was helpful and what was needed in the industry. But some of it we're eventually kind of coding so it can populate state by state, but we're just kind of tweaking it and responding to the needs of our customers as we go on. So you set up a case, and then you click on that case. We, for purposes of the demo, just call it Ruby Tuesday. So when I click on Ruby's case, right now there are a few different things that you can do with the software. You can provide document collection, and that's a portal where clients can send me their tax returns, their pay stubs, emails, text messages. Anything they want me to have is right here. Instead of having to send that to me via fax or email, I can just log in because it's cloud-based software, and I can get all their information. All of my staff can see whatever the client has uploaded, so if they're working on it, I log in, we can have real-time information at the same time. There's an asset and debt collection, which I'll walk you through in a minute. There's a monthly budget, and then there's an exhibit list. And we keep, like I said, as clients say we want additional information added, we keep adding to the software. Document collection, it just populates with the information I want clients to add, but I can tweak it if I want additional information, and I can change the information I'm requesting. So it basically acts as a portal for discovery, and I'll show you how I can share that with an opposing attorney instead of, again, having to send over information to another law firm. Asset and debt collection is kind of the biggest piece of a lot of divorces. You need to build out what you have for your assets and debts. So clients can go in, add items, and there's just a pretty simple screen. I said I wanted it super simple because I'm not techie, and I know attorneys don't like being trained on new software, so it had to be very intuitive and user-friendly. You can enter it, and this is the beauty of it, is the clients now can enter in this information. So if you want to enter in your couch, your checking account, your vehicle, your home, you can take the time to do this instead of paying me to do your data entry. Right now, my hourly bill rate, $350 an hour. So if you have me doing this, you just, a third of my time, you could have just purchased the software and done it yourself. And clients like having that control, where they can enter in all of this information, they can tweak numbers, they can work on proposals. It gives them that ability to build out that information. This is one of the things that most of the attorneys and clients like the most, is the ability to upload and attach documents. So you can pull up anything that's on your computer, and it'll attach that document. So if my client, I will give them access to this case tell them to build out their asset and debt inventory. Sometimes the next day, I'll log in. They've entered 200 assets and debts, and they've attached documents that support those values. It's fun because it can speed up the case too. So I don't have to wait for them to give me the information. They don't have to wait for me to enter the information. So they can upload a document and they can attach, for example, a mortgage statement or a check statement, a balance statement, or a tax statement, whatever you want to upload, or a Kelly Blue Book to support the value. Because that's one of the biggest pieces with discovery and divorces is having that asset and debt inventory and then the documents that support the valuation that you came up with. So once you kind of build out your asset and debt inventory, you can see by category, real estate, autos, credit cards, whatever the issue is, clients can start playing around with proposals. If they want to take the house, they want to give their spouse a checking account, they want to have an automobile, whatever the case is, they can play around with the allocation. And once clients can see, they'll come into me and they'll say, well, if my husband takes this and I take that, is that fair? When they actually add up the numbers and they see, oh, that's a 72-28% split, my spouse probably isn't going to go for it, they can go in and then reshuffle some of the numbers. So it gives them the ability to play around with different proposals. It also gives them the ability to add what's called a lump sum payment or an equalization payment. It'll automatically recalculate that for them. So they can see, I need to pay my spouse $42,716 to get it to an exact 50-50 split. So it allows clients to go through some of those proposals. When I'm ready, I can share this with an opposing attorney, and this is kind of the secret sauce of the software. Right now, once I've built out my asset and debt inventory and I'm ready to send it to another attorney, I can only send them a PDF or I can send them an email of my proposal. I can hit send publish to an opposing attorney, and they'll get an invitation from the system that I've invited them to use the software. It's a one-time fee per case, so it doesn't cost another attorney to use the software when I send them an invitation. So when I publish it to an opposing attorney, we'll say Stacy Sharp. She gets an invitation from the system, and once it's published, she can't mess with all my numbers. She can hit copy, but she can't do anything with my private versions. So if I want to work through 10 different proposals and options, they don't see what I'm working on for private versions. But once it's been published, it's nice because you also have a snapshot of proposals. So you can see exactly 4 weeks ago they offered this, they only came up 2,000, you went down 7,000, and you can remember exactly what those proposals were. So they can hit copy, and then they can go in. So now that their client isn't paying them, again, whatever their hourly rate is, to do data entry. And then you're both working in your own silo doing data entry. You go to a settlement or mediation, and you literally spend hours just trying to get on the same page. What assets do you have? You check it off. Where did you get this information? Where's the supporting documentation? They can see exactly where we got everything, and they can see all the attachments that have been included. So it basically sends everything over to the opposing attorney right away. One other cool feature that we added is when there are several proposals, and sometimes you sit in mediation and there's 10, 15 proposals going back and forth, they would all pop up under published versions and it date stamps them. You can click which ones you want to compare. So you can see exactly what changes the opposing attorney made so that you don't have to go through line by line. It'll pull out all the changes for you. So it'll tell you if they added any documents, if they added 4 assets, if they changed any of your numbers, or if they deleted anything. If they think, oh, that asset was already sold, or whatever the case is, it'll actually pull out and highlight those changes that were made. So it speeds up the comparison of the different proposals that go back and forth. That's just in a nutshell the asset and debt allocation monthly budget. If you have a spousal support case, you can have your client input all their expenses. You can have them input documents to support the values. And then again, when you're ready, you can send it over to the opposing attorney. Exhibit list. The software actually creates exhibit lists when you're preparing for trial. And it'll pull up all of the documents that you've already uploaded. This is more for staff to go through and use, but it'll pull up all of the documents that have been uploaded. You can print it, and it actually creates an asset and debt inventory that you have to prepare for court anyway. So it takes all the information you've gathered, and it really streamlines the process. We can actually add a judge to this as well. So now if you go into court, and you both have your own proposals, instead of the judge now having to type in a list of 200 assets for the 3rd time, and sometimes they make errors in transposing numbers, I can send this to a judge. So they can say, oh, I like Krista's proposal, but I want to switch a few things, so they don't have to enter everything in again. It has the property equalization piece, and it'll automatically do everything for them. So now instead of having 3 people do the data entry, you have 1. So it greatly reduces the amount of time and money that everyone has to spend on divorces. So in a nutshell, that's the software. If you have any questions on how we're doing, how long we've been up and running, how everything is going, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. So thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the question and answer portion. Kate will be our mic runner, so if you have a question, raise your hand, and she'll run over and give you the mic. And I think I can kick us off. Maybe what you just described, talk a little bit about the company as a whole. How many employees? Is this officially launched? Are you selling subscriptions? That sort of stuff.
Yep, so we incorporated a couple of years ago. We have 3 owners. It's myself, the engineer for Microsoft, and then the investor. So there's just the 3 of us that have the ownership interest in the company. In 2018, we were doing our beta testing just to make sure that people, that it worked, that we didn't have glitches. We were working through that. The beauty of being a local attorney is I had other attorneys that were willing to try out the software, and that's one of the hardest pieces, is getting attorneys to try something new, frankly. It's the biggest barrier. So we had attorneys using it, seeing what worked, didn't work, add-ons, features. So we had it as a free service for North Dakota attorneys in 2018. In 2019, we turned on the pay feature, where we did require people to pay if they were going to use the software. That, to me, was kind of the biggest turning point to see, are people going to think there's value once they're required to pay? When it's free, they might use it. We have about 1,500 users, and in about 5 months, we've had about $25,000 of income. So pretty good that we're actually, and our run costs are about $500 to $1,000 a month, just for cloud hosting and whatnot. So if we don't do anything more than just host the software, that's the beauty of having a partner who's an engineer that can make all the changes and fixes and add-ons. We don't have to spend a lot of money running the program. So now we're really working on rolling that out to other states and getting more users and just the marketing and advertising and sales.
Perfect. Evan.
She answered most of my questions, but I think I still have a couple. In terms of the development, are there still some things that you're constantly tweaking? I would guess you're still on a fairly steep slope there. And then 2, what is the plan for expansion, and how do you market this to a much broader audience? It sounds like the pieces are there to really make an impact on that industry.
Sure. So, we just kind of add features as customers or clients say they want them added. So, for example, if they say we want to add an option where somebody can take pictures of personal property around their home on their phone, and then it automatically populates, we're working on that. So if somebody wants to take a picture of the lamp and the vacuum cleaner and whatever, they can take a picture and there'll be a new list. So depending on what the needs are and the responses from the clients, we keep making those tweaks. We did also collaborate with Divorcify. It's a company out of New York. It's more of a platform just for services and resources for clients and attorneys. And then if somebody signs up on Divorcify for a Partis subscription, they'll get a cut of the, so we do things like that to try to market it. But that's frankly the hardest part of a startup, I found. Like I said, I've just practiced family law for 20 years. I had no desire to be a tech entrepreneur. That's the hardest part, is just kind of getting it out with the limited funds that you have. And we were fortunate because we had $100,000 and I didn't have to spend any on development. But even at that, buying a website, $6,000, or buying just the domain name, of Partis.com, $6,000. Getting your website developed, 10. You go to a conference, 10 grand. You can burn through that money pretty quick. That's really the tough part for startups, is if you don't have some money. And then if somebody wants to get into your question on sales, we had interest from Westlaw, the company that had that 95 database last year, but they wanted to know what our sales were. We didn't have sales because we were still in the A/B testing phase. So then, they're not really interested in a purchase or a buyout until you have that sales record or history. So we've had interest from folks. We're talking to some people actually in Silicon Valley that have some interest in doing some investing. You just have to kind of take it a step at a time. And then we both have our day job too. So you try to do stuff like this on the side and roll it out and see what works and what doesn't work. But yeah.
Question in the front.
My question is whether or not it's been, are most of your clients from the Fargo area? Because as you had mentioned, attorneys that you do know, have you had a good success putting it statewide? You've talked a little bit about having it go into different states. And then the other part of it is it the attorneys that are hearing about it? Is it their clients? And how well received is it by the judges?
A few questions, and I'll try to remember all of them. In North Dakota, we have a lot of Fargo attorneys using it, quite a few Grand Forks, quite a few Bismarck attorneys actually using it. I think it's the hardest part, again, is people are used to using one thing, and I'm guilty of that too, where I don't want to learn something new. You're busy, you have your day job. it's getting attorneys to change what they've been doing, and there's a real push in the legal industry nationally that attorneys need to be, and they're starting to require CLE credits on tech competency, frankly, for attorneys. The legal industry is behind banking, behind real estate, behind almost every other industry because we're so used to doing things a certain way for hundreds of years. So there's a push towards getting attorneys more tech savvy, and customers and consumers are starting to demand that attorneys allow them to do some things because it's not just everything that they can do. Like I said, build out your asset and debt inventory. That's not legal work. Maybe writing a brief and legal research I can do, but I don't need to do this. So there's a push for that, but it's slow in coming. So your question was, so use by other attorneys. Minneapolis, we have attorneys. You know, we have kind of, it's interesting because you have to kind of figure out how you roll it out. We have people that'll find it on the internet. They just do a search. So we have a user in Texas, then we had one in Missouri, and we have one in Arkansas. So they're kind of popping up all over. We have users in about 25 states, but they're little pockets, you know, here and there. So how you roll it out, that again, that's kind of the hardest part with the limited funds. Is it social media? Is it going to conferences? You know, we've went to a few conferences, a family law conference and then a tech conference, and people walk by your booth. Some take time, some don't. Some just want your free, you know, merchandise, and then they leave. People say that they're blown away by it, and then when they get back to the office, taking the time to go and change their ways are difficult and hard. But the people, once they've used it a few times, it's like analogous to a flip phone. If you have a flip phone, at first when you get that iPhone, you think, oh, this is awkward, I don't like it. And then once you've used it for a few days or a few weeks, you can't imagine going back. So it's one of those pieces of technology that it's hard, I think, kind of getting people to change. But we've had really good feedback from people that are in their 70s and 80s that aren't techie, that really like it because it is user-friendly and they're able to use it. And you see clients up at 2 in the morning typing away, and I can see when clients have logged on. There's a kind of an audit trail, so I can see when a client has viewed it or they've updated it, so I can see what changes they've made too. And as an attorney, I didn't run through all the bells and whistles. I can set it so clients can just view the software if I don't want them messing with my data and my proposals. Or I can set it where they can edit it. So if I want you to do data entry, I can flip it over to then view only. Or if I want to do, some attorneys want to do all of the work, you can set it so clients can only view it. So that there's that feature in case attorneys didn't want to allow clients to do it. It gives them that option. Yeah. And you know, that's kind of the double-edged sword about this software, is because how do you market it? When you're marketing to consumers, you say this can save you a lot of money because you don't have to pay your attorney to do it. But then you turn around to the attorney and you say, oh, this can cost you a lot of money because your client can do it now. So you have to sell it differently. It can create more efficiencies. You know, they can do the legal work instead of having to do the data entry. It can streamline the process. They can get more clients. But the messaging is different for attorneys than it is for consumers. So that's another part that's kind of difficult with rolling out the software.
My last question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. No. And actually, they asked me to present. I presented to a judges seminar for North Dakota judges. They were all very receptive. Several of them came up and said, this is a smiler, can I invest? Somewhat jokingly. They really like it. Here's kind of some of the glitchy issues. And again, you have to triage and see where you're going to go first with rolling out a new product. Some of the North Dakota attorneys wanted their IT folks to have complete control over the system. And my IT guy said, I can't even do that because if there's troubleshooting or we have upgrades, it's just not even possible. They were concerned that their work product could be viewed by an IT person. The only IT person is Tim. Tim said, you know, frankly, that's a little bit archaic because if you're sending an email and you're typing something, somebody out there somewhere, you know, that has access to your system at Microsoft can see it if they really wanted to. So we didn't really keep pursuing that avenue. We could still share it with them, but we didn't really push that avenue. But it was well received, and again, we could kind of go that route, and they were open to it. We just have to find a way around it, but with limited resources, you have to pick which way you're going to go first. But yep.
Marketing idea for you. Endorsement from Judge Judy.
There you go, right? I
might go along
know,
with-
yeah.
Question in the back.
Hi. With you having one partner who invested capital for equity and another partner who invested services for equity, how did you determine the valuation? And if you're willing to share, what is that ownership breakdown?
Ownership is third, because Tim and I put all of our efforts into it. So we've contributed our work product, and then the other contributed the capital. So we just decided on a third. We don't have a valuation set per se. We haven't had to come up with a valuation because we haven't had a buyout yet. And then I do own 51% ownership control of the company just for a tiebreaker, and since I started it up. We did have, I'm part of the Innovate ND program, which I don't know if a lot of you have heard about, but that's pretty cool. You go through these different phases, and now I'm in phase 3, so we did receive about $25,000 of funding from the state of North Dakota. That's one of the hardest parts, too, about being a startup is the individual, this Dr. Jeffrey Stamp, who coordinates the programs, comes and trains, and at first he didn't kind of get what the company did. He said, you have competition with the legal Zooms and there are, other forums out there. And I said, that's not what we do. He looked at it more closely and he said, can I use you as an example during our training? And he kind of was not picking on me, but he said, if I asked you to sell it to me today for $1 million, would you? I thought, $1 million when we have software and time and effort into it. And I said, not $1 million. He said, 2. It's getting, a little closer. He's like, 3. And I said, yeah. He said, I'll tell my wife to write you a check afterwards. And then he and his business partner came up and met because they wanted to get involved and help out with the organization. Then he's so busy, he goes to Ireland, then you don't hear from somebody for months. And then you meet with them and you get excited and then you don't hear from them. So he had said, if you get an offer, don't give any less than $3 million for that business, for a buyout. But then you don't hear from somebody, so it's like, ooh, it's worth $3 million, then you don't hear from them. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna take off? So lots of ups and downs with startups.
Sure. Question?
Krista, I didn't see in there, where does the child support calculation come in, or how is that, or do you do that completely separate?
We don't have a child support calculator, and in large part, I didn't want to do something that was already out there and duplicate it and try to include something that somebody else has already done. So there is no child support calculator in there. Could we put a link in there to the child support calculator? Sure, but North Dakota already has the one out there. It doesn't really tie into the asset and debt inventory. There's a line in the budget piece to include if there's a spousal support or a child support obligation, but otherwise we didn't do like I said, I didn't want to duplicate anything that was out there in terms of what attorneys can do or LegalZoom or child support calculators. It's just something totally different that there was a void for.
As you continue to expand to different states, are there other legal requirements or different laws and regulations that you have to abide by, or is it pretty universal throughout every state laws?
That's, again, the beauty of this software is it does not give legal advice, so you don't have to be licensed in every state, and you don't have to be up to date on what every state's laws are. That being said, when you first set up a case, for example, in Florida, we have some users in Florida. Florida has a form that's required to be filled out in any divorce that requires assets and debts and information in a certain format. So what we actually did, working with some attorneys down there, is we populated, if you enter in that you have a case from Florida, it'll automatically populate differently, the request for information, so it's tailored to Florida cases, so then it matches exactly what they need for a Florida divorce. They can enter it, print it, and send it to the court. We're doing that with New York, too, because New York has a specific form. So once we start getting users in a state, then we go over there and we try to edit it to make it work for those users. But until there's a need, we don't want to do something if it's not going to be needed.
Sure. Evan?
Exit strategy. You've talked a little bit about maybe finding a buyer. Was that kind of the plan or the goal in the beginning? Are you feeling more attached now, or you're less apt to do that? What's the end game here?
End game, to me, it's still kind of funny when people say exit strategy because it still feels like it's just so new. Not that I'm so attached that I can't. I don't have a burning desire to be a full-time tech entrepreneur necessarily. But again, if it takes off and there's a need and it's going well and I enjoy it, great. If not, do I have that much ownership over it that I couldn't sell it? No. If it was the right offer. Ideally, what would be nice is if you could still keep a small ownership interest in it, just to see the benefits of it if it did. But not to be in full-time. And that's the hard part, too. Tim knows coding and software better than anyone. I know what attorneys and judges and clients want and need. I don't know the business aspect of it and the social media. I'm not good at social media. So we have somebody, I did her divorce for free, and then now she's working it off by doing all of that stuff for me. So we're doing some of those swaps because you got to be kind of frugal about how you do these things. So she's doing that for me, but then she'll send me instructions on how to post, and I still get anxious about posting. I'm like, I don't like posting, but there's all of that stuff that's involved with it that's really beyond my pay grade. So
You don't give away free divorces at the conferences, do you?
I know, right? Okay. I should.
Question in the back.
You had a lot of experience with family law, and I was just wondering, how does this format change or affect the way you deal with those kind of emotional issues and communication issues that people have in these kinds of situations? Does it change things? Or if I'm paying $350 an hour, I think I'd be careful about getting a lot of my own emotional baggage in the situation. So can you talk about that?
Sure. There are people that are going to use you to still be a counselor. I had a phone call yesterday that was a half hour of basically counseling, and that's fine if that's what they want to use me for, and they want and they're willing to pay for that. This doesn't take care of some of that, but what it does help with is so often I would get clients, partially I'd get a little impatient and frustrated, you have other things to do, and then you think, I'm billing you for this, and then they are upset or they don't like the bill, but there's nothing out there that they could do this on their own. So they would call after we'd create an asset and debt inventory, and then the divorce goes on for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, and they'd say, well, now this checking account balance went up, or now I have more money here, or now the stocks went up. Can you change these numbers? And some people were really compulsive about that, and they're calling you all the time. And then you go in and then you change the numbers, and then they want you to print it out and send it to them. So you're billing them every time you do that. Now they can just go in and plug it in. So if they want to change it a lot, they can change it a lot. They don't have to get frustrated. They have more control over the process. I think that's kind of one of the biggest things I've found is that part of the stress and the anxiousness of divorces is reduced because they can log in at 2 in the morning. Or I had a client sitting on the beach in Hawaii while we were negotiating her divorce. She could log in every time a proposal came through. And she was, but she didn't have to be sitting right there. So they can just check in on it whenever they want to check in on it. And then when you get to mediation, because I'll share this with an opposing attorney a month into it, I'll say, I'm just building out an asset and debt inventory. I'll send you what you have. You can work off of it. But then you go to mediation and you literally don't spend 2 hours before you even dig into who gets what and the important issues, because you're just saying, okay, you have this one, where's this value, where's the document that supports this? You do that in every mediation, and that's what always frustrated me. And clients are frustrated because you still haven't dug into anything, and that's all you're doing. This just completely reduces that. So again, the big emotional issues of custody or spousal support, it's not going to necessarily reduce that, but it helps with some of the things we can help with.
Question?
Mac, so this is going to sound silly, but is there an expiration date? Because on cases, because I've heard of some that have lasted 2 years, some that are coming back to be revisited after 10 years.
Yep, nope, no expiration date. And and that's another thing too, we're gonna add just another little kind of a portal for court documents. So a lot of people, that's another piece too, where people would say, my divorce, what does it say about when I pick up the kids? And well, if you had a copy of that stipulation, you wouldn't have to call me and be billed for it. But they don't, and I had one guy that kept it in his lunchbox for years in case he would ever need to refer to it. And he came into me and it was all, full of food and coffee stains and wrinkly, but that's how he knew what his divorce decree said. But there'll be, so there's like you said, you can upload documents, and you could just throw in a stipulation or discovery or anything will be there. So you can log in on your phone, and we're working on an app, but it's hard to see the financials on a small phone. So you can log in though, and you can see exactly what your decree says or whatever the numbers are, and there's no expiration date on it.
Kate?
They kind of we had Bushel here, I don't know, 8 months ago, and maybe it was less than that, but they were kind of working it. It's basically free for farmers to use, but the elevators had to pay for it. And I see it in a similar way here where, the customer really likes using it. And so you kind of, not force, but the firm who has the software probably gets more clients or something like that. Is it really driven from the customer side, I assume? Because you mentioned, well, attorneys maybe don't want to give up some of those hourly wages, or they'd have to find more clients. I'm just curious, like if I was getting divorced, I'd be like, I'm gonna check out someone who's got some sweet ass software, and
and that's
for me.
Again, kind of the hard part is you're so limited in your budget with a startup that we haven't really been able to do the testing to see, is it more beneficial to really market to the consumer or to the attorney? And right now, just because I've known so many attorneys and they have been using it, that's kind of where we've been going with it. As it continues to grow, maybe you do more marketing towards the consumer. Another interesting statistic, 80 to 95% of people now going through divorces, one or both of them don't have attorneys. So a lot of people are trying to either save money, do it on their own, don't want to spend the money. And and again, as attorneys, if we don't become more flexible and more with what consumers are requesting, instead of just saying, nope, you have to have an attorney, you can't do anything on your own, only we can do it because we know what's up here, we're going to push people to LegalZoom. I don't think those types of services, again, are helpful. But if you can give them some input and control in the process, it reduces their time. Let us do the job of lawyering. You can do some of the other work. So, yeah.
Do you have specific ways of measuring that and being able to shift to your marketing to the attorney side versus the individual clients?
No, no. If I had another $1 million, yeah, I'd stick somebody on that, but no, not yet. So that's the tough thing is with, Tim and I both still doing our full-time gigs. You just do what you can to, yeah.
And this might be more the Tim side of business, but Fargo has a growing tech scene. Have you guys been able to plug into any of that yet? And maybe just speak to being a startup in North Dakota, advantages, disadvantages, anything like that?
Right now, again, because I say Tim's kind of a coding savant, he's phenomenally talented and he can code everything so quickly that we really don't need that resource to use other people to do any of the tech work. But it is a good tech community and startup community. I mean, like I said, the Innovate ND program has been really good and helpful. So there's certainly the resources out there. Again, more than anything, it's getting attorneys to kind of shift the way they do things. And there's so much literature that shows that, again, we're just on that cusp and they're just starting to require it, and it's generational a little bit, and it's just, so I think I think the software is just a little bit ahead of the industry. So we just have to kind of wait it out, and I think it will come, but just being a little patient still.
Done.
So have you, now that you're in multiple states, has the word of mouth from attorney to attorney, an attorney that has used Pardes, has that been beneficial? Have you been able to track that type of thing?
I think it's been beneficial. Part of, again, the difficulty with the software is because it's so different from what we've always done for so long. There was even an attorney at a firm who one of the partners has used the software for years, one of my biggest proponents, and he has now an associate attorney who is using it. And I said, can you share what you've built out with me? And she said, oh, I don't know how to publish it. So it's just, whether it's that training piece or what attorneys are afraid of is that their work product can be seen. Everything is so privileged, but they, again, if they're working on a private version, the other opposing attorney will never see what they're doing until they hit publish, just like when you hit send email. So there's a little bit of that caution with attorneys, but then you train them or you teach them, and then they kind of figure it out. But it's just different way of doing things, and I think, again, once we change our ways, so yes, there is some word of mouth, and there were some, you can see our sales every month, and you'll see some where, somebody bought a 1 case, and then they bought another case, and then they bought a 5-case package. So I think once they've used it, they start, and that'll come, but we've been all of a year where it's really been rolled out, so I want it to be instantly, we thought, and it still could be kind of an organic growth, because when you hit publish, so if I'm an attorney in Fargo, I have a case with an attorney in Minneapolis, I hit publish, I'll have an attorney in Minneapolis that's using the software, and their information is in there, and we've used it. So it can even grow that way organically too, but it wasn't quite as fast as we thought that could possibly happen, because again, you have to almost train attorney to attorney. So,
If you have 2 firms working on a single case, do both have to be pay for a subscription?
Nope.
Just one?
So if one firm has a subscription and the other one has never used it, it's just, or you buy 1 case for $99, just the one person who buys it. So they can use it, their opposing attorney can use it, both clients can use it. Another thing that you can do too, which is kind of nice, like I've had clients out in the oil field, and one had a water transport company, and he had a bookkeeper, and he had an accountant. So all these people had information, so I can add them to my team as an advisor. So from different places in the state, they were uploading and building out his asset and debt inventory, and he wanted nothing to do with it. He didn't really know what he had, multimillionaire, but I gave them access, and then when I was ready to shut it off, I could delete them and not allow them to change things. But they were building out that asset and debt inventory with me, and we could see what was being done. So you can add several people on your team, or you get the client that says, my dad's an accountant, he kind of really knows my financials, can you give him access? Yep, so you can add him, and then they can do it too. So it's kind of nice that you can get many, many people to collaborate on it. There's no limit.
Question in the front.
All right, so you had mentioned that one of the biggest barriers to entry is training, getting folks to understand the functionality and to be able to do it. Do you have, I think we've all met an owner's manual that was really ready. What do you have in terms of both training and support? Do you have manuals? Do you have YouTube videos? Or do you have a 1-800 number?
Yep, so we have a number that's my cell phone right now, yeah, until it continues to grow. But we have been working on videos. The individual whose divorce I did for free does user interface and some videos. So we've done a few videos of just snippets of different features and functions. So that's how we find it's kind of most useful, instead of doing a half-hour, hour-long training, 5 minutes on this, 5 minutes on that. And you can almost see, like when I've trained other attorneys too, at first they're kind of like, they're kind of not paying attention or not real interested. And then it's like almost that light bulb goes on after about 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know if you guys found that too, and I don't know if there's a certain way that I can phrase it or pitch it, but then something happens where they're like, wow, now I get it. That's really cool. But it takes a little bit to kind of explain it. It's not a one-liner where you can kind of say, oh, we make divorces easier. Well, how? So that's what's hard about the software, I think. But when you explain it a little longer, they get it.
I work for CoSchedule, a local tech company, and we call that the aha moments.
Yeah.
We talk about that exact same thing.
Yep.
Okay, this is my third question, so I had to make sure you're not worried here, but
All right. I know, right?
kind of the B2B portion in terms of pricing, to me, that sounds like a really low price. You're saving these folks literally thousands of dollars. So have you considered maybe something where you charge considerably more to the attorney, but they might turn around and bill that or even more, turn that into a little bit of a potential profit for the attorney? Because we have this tool that we're going to use that's going to save you ultimately.
The price point is tough to figure out what's kind of that sweet spot, and, we'll see as we go. But you're right, it could literally save people thousands of dollars if they're doing this and updating, and it saves everybody time. It's hard to kind of quantify because some cases have 10 assets, some have 200, some have really picky people that want to update everything all the time and include every vacuum and Tupperware. Others just have the big items. So the price point is kind of tough to figure out exactly. Attorneys can't profit. You can't ethically say, oh, I paid $1,000 for the software, but I'm going to turn around and pay, charge you $5,000. You can't do that. So you can only pass on the cost that you've incurred. So that's why we added the option to either do case by case. So when I purchase it, I purchase it a one-time case, so then I know exactly how much I contribute to or can bill to the client. If you buy a one-year subscription, it's unlimited. So it's really hard if you're putting cases in January to know if you're going to have 50 clients or 200. So you don't know how to bill it. But some firms just take that on as an expense. They just say, well, it's just like, cable or, telephone or whatever. They just pay for it, but they don't pass it on to the client. So you can do either one, though. You can pass that expense on to the client.
All right, well, before we wrap things up, we always like to ask one last question. It's the same last question. So, Kate, would you do the honors?
Yeah, thank you for coming here. We always ask the same last question, which is, when are you moving back to Bismarck?
I know, right? I don't know. That'd be tough.
Let me just sell it. We've got hills.
I know. I know.
Fargo.
Until you have to run those things, though.
True.
When I was training for the
don't
marathons, I was
recommend
so glad I was in Fargo years ago. Like, it was so much easier out there.
Number 15 on the livability.com.
True.
Uh-huh.
I know.
We've great restaurants, a river that is a real river.
I know.
So whatever, let me know. We can figure it out. So we do always ask the same last question that isn't that, but a lot of times I'll sneak that one in. So what can we as the Bismarck Manda and 1 Million Cups community do to help you and part us?
Two things. Like I said, we don't do a ton of right now posting on social media, but if you let's link in on LinkedIn, and if we post something, if you can share it, just that word of mouth. If you have any feedback or input for, like you said, that aha moment, boy, if you said this, or if you phrased it that way, or, if you have any feedback like that too that's helpful. I find the more people I talk to, sometimes you think, oh, it's a group of, whatever, they might not have information that's helpful for me, and that somebody will have one little tidbit or piece or connection, so you just never know where things take you. So if you have any feedback or you have a connection or ideas, I'd be happy to take that feedback.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us, Krista. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Nice light topic for your Wednesday morning, talk about divorces. But thanks for joining us today. Please come back next Wednesday. We have another speaker, not sure who it is, but we will be here. So please join us and have a good rest of your Wednesday.